Welcome to Weather Questions, where we answer the questions on your radar.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode here of Weathered Questions. Meteorologist Kai O'Mara alongside meteorologist Jan Ryherd. We're getting the summer all wrapped up, Jan. And, typically in the Midwest, June is one of the rainiest times of year. But lately, oh my gosh, it's just the rain's been moving over the exact same areas. And just a quick highlight for folks that may not realize this. Eastern Indiana last week picked up more than a foot of rain in a day. They're not close to a beach out there. Okay? They aren't.
They might be now.
They might be now, but oh my gosh. And it was just the rains were just training and training and training. What is the deal with that? Why do they do that, Jan? People are asking all the time, like, why does it keep moving over the same spots?
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned that word there, training, right? That's something that we use as meteorologists a lot. Maybe you've heard that before. Training storms are those that just like Kai just described, essentially they just keep going over the exact same area over and over and over. And if you look at a radar image of these storms, it might look like the storm is hardly even moving. And it's literally just sitting over top of a city or a certain area. And in part, that's kind of true. What's actually happening is that storm itself is moving, but then it's kind of regenerating on the back end. So it's kind of dying out on the front, regenerating on the back. And so while the true storm itself is moving with, the steering winds and stuff, the precipitation does not actually move and continues to occur over the same area. And so there's a couple different reasons that can happen. And there's also a couple different kind of flavors, I guess, of those training storms as well. The simplest version is probably just a stationary front, where you have something that usually like a warm front and a cold front maybe that are kind of competing against each other, not allowing those boundaries to move on as they normally would. And so you get that stalled boundary that basically just doesn't let the weather keep moving forward. And so then that's when you get these areas that just constantly get precipitation over and over and over. And yeah, that's where you can get, especially, in the summer months in humid Midwest, if you have enough moisture available, it's where you can get some pretty tricky situations with maybe some flash flooding or things like that. But that's probably the simplest explanation. There's also some opportunities for, upper level winds and other things to get involved, as well as we talked a little bit in the last couple of episodes here, or really a couple episodes this season, I think, about the low level jet. That can also have an influence in it too. But that's probably the simplest explanation. And we do try to keep things at least a little bit on the simple side here.
Yeah, probably has to do with the wind too a little bit. Either the winds are really slow, so it's not really moving the storm very much, or they just keep moving in the exact same spot over and over and over again. It's like focusing a hairdryer in one spot and it just doesn't want to move. And so that might be part of it. But to your point, like people would look at radar and then 4 hours later, it goes, "This is the same radar? Did it update?" Yeah, it updated. Everything just regenerated again. So You can get a ton of rain with storms like that. And, people's backyards up in my neighborhood right now are intensely green, green. And we're getting mushrooms all over the place.
Yes.
And I'm having to watch that with the dog big time because I don't know what those are, but we have to get those pulled right away. I don't know what they are, but they pop up overnight.
Yeah.
And they're huge. I mean,
they're
some of them are, the size of a measuring tape, maybe. The heads on them, they're pretty big, like 2 inches across, 2.5 inches across.
I love that measuring tape was the first thought in your mind. Not like our, classic hail measurements, like softball size, baseball size, measuring tape size.
No, it's just, I was looking around the office. This is the first thing I saw when we were doing this. The other part is the CO2 card, and we don't want a mushroom the size of a CO2 car. At least not right away. So.
Well, on that same kind of similar note, Kai, we have dove into a few topics similar to this, but because it's so relevant and prevalent in our lives right now, we've had a couple questions coming in of what is up with all of these early morning storms? Like, this is not common. This is not normal. What's going on here? Can you give the listeners some answers?
Sure. Well, and hopefully we've established enough, and I'd have to go back and we'd have to figure out which episodes we've talked about this type of thing. But the time of day for storms has definitely been one that I think both to you and me, Jan, at least in our very early days until we got to college, we're kind of mistaught. A lot of us kind of thought heating of the day, and then after that, they just don't happen. Well, that's just simply not true. And as we've seen across the country, we see it every year, but particularly so in the last 10 days, that these storms have really gotten their act together in the late night and early morning hours when there isn't an ounce of sunshine anywhere in the United States. And you sit there and you go, well, what's driving this? How can this possibly happen? We talked a little about the low-level jet last time, but there's probably two processes at play here. The first one has been blamed a lot for the summertime storms, and that's that whole ring of fire pattern where you've got the heat wave and then the storms move around the outside of the heat wave. This one may have a little different mechanism to it, and it's a surprise for most people, especially those that live in the Midwest, to know that the United States actually has a monsoon season. And a lot of times you think about that over in India or Asian places. You don't think about that in North America. But the bottom line is, down in the Southwest United States, there is something called the Southwest U.S. monsoon. And a lot of folks take monsoon as the word for a huge, heavy downpour. It's a monsoon out there. But in reality, it's a whole lot less exciting. Monsoon is just a seasonal wind shift. That's all it is. And that's why it's so predictable to go out to Las Vegas in October and November and have really beautiful weather. But go to Las Vegas in July and August, and you're bound to get wet out there. And I'll tell you that the Southwest monsoon, for over 50% of their precipitation, you can account for that in July and August. And that's in Arizona, New Mexico states, southern Nevada. And then meanwhile, off to the east. So what happens is there is an area of intense heat. Usually, and this is a fun fact, in the Midwest, we tend to get the warmest temperatures of the year in July. In eastern Texas and Louisiana, it's more like August, even early September. And if you haven't looked lately, Dallas, Texas has been cooking like 104, 105 every day. Not a cloud in the sky. And the monsoon is going around that and moving up and through Mexico and then into the Southwest U.S. And then what happens is those waves go up into Nebraska, and then they move east into Iowa, and then they go around through Illinois and Indiana, and then they actually make it all the way around. And they go all the way down to the Carolinas and then back out to the Atlantic. And they just do a full circle. So I think that's probably at play, Jan, mostly for the timing of the storms, because once they're established and it's already warm and humid, we've probably already noticed this for those of us in the state. I mean, we had our sliding glass door fogged over entirely.
Ours has been, regularly like that. Yeah.
And we aren't AC snobs. Like,
Same.
It was just that humid out. And then I went to start the dryer and it starts screaming at me. And I'm going, all right, this has been a horrible month for expenses. I'm going to spare all the listeners that. I'll tell you that off camera. But the dryer starts screaming and I'm going, what in the world's going on? The outside of the drum had condensed. And the rubber belt driving the drum was actually slipping on it.
Wow.
In the morning.
This
is before the corn has even done anything. The corn's not even awake yet.
Yep.
So, I mean, it was just a remarkable amount of humidity. And long story short, I think that's the reason for the morning timing. It was a very regular timing. You could just time it out like a clock. And that's how the monsoon season works down in the Southwest U.S. So if you didn't know they had a monsoon season, now you know.
And if you take anything away from this episode, I think that is one of the biggest maybe weather myths is monsoon does not mean rain. It means wind that happens to often drive rain patterns in the southwestern U.S. Or, you hear about the monsoon season in Asia and stuff like that too, right?
Those
not
wet seasons are
rain.
critical. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep,
And,
absolutely.
the Southwest U.S. could use all the water right now they could get based on some of the lake levels out there.
Oh,
So
yeah.
hopefully this is, one of those cases that can actually help them at the end of the day versus hurt them. Even though it has been a ton of rain for everybody else,
Mhm.
hopefully they're getting some of this rain too that they desperately need down there.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, talking about rain and other parts of the world and the country, we're going to move on a little bit from good old Midwest weather for our trivia question today. And we're going to ask you a little bit about mountains. So today's trivia question, true or false? So 50-50 shot here. One side of a mountain is more likely to receive rain than the other. True or false? One side of a mountain is more likely to receive rain than the other. I'll give you a few seconds to think about that, and we'll be back with the answer in just a few. All right, so that trivia question today. You okay, Kai?
Sorry, I'm fine. I bumped my hand on the counter. I'm fine.
All right, so today's trivia question: one side of a mountain is more likely to receive rain than the other, and that's a true or false question. What do you think it is? 50 shot? It's true. I'd be surprised how many people. Maybe you're like, well, they're probably asking this for a reason, and so you guess true, but maybe you don't really have a good understanding as to why that might be. Essentially, mountains, there is what we call in meteorology a windward side and a leeward side, and that windward side is going to get more surprise wind.
Yep.
And essentially what happens, we all know, we're gonna take a step back to the mountains for a second. We all know that clouds happen when air is moving upward. You have rising air, you get clouds to form. Essentially, the mountains are something that forces all of that air to move upward. So on that windward side, you have your air being pushed upward. You get your clouds to form. You get stronger winds. You get your precipitation. And then on the other side, something that we call a rain shadow, where basically all the precipitation has been used up, and kind of get a drier patch or a mountain desert that will occur. So yeah, that one's true, but just not something we have to deal with very much here in the Midwest. But definitely an interesting phenomenon and something that very prevalent in the Western U.S. for us.
Causes all sorts of havoc out there in the mountain range. That's why it's so hard to predict snow out there.
Mm-hmm.
Down to the inch. I mean, it's really difficult to do. I mean, you can tell there's parts that are more favored than others to get snow events when the winds are what they are. But I mean, to your point, the mountains are a big hill. They're a big rocky hill that's in the way of the wind. And so the wind can't go underground. It's going to have to be forced up. So there's a big word for that. It's called orographic is what it's called. And it's called orographic lift. And it lifts up in there and it condenses it out. Back when I was in college, there was actually an old little module that we played with. And I have yet to be able to find it on the internet anywhere. We used to call it Mountain Sim is what it was. And you'd set the temperature and the dew point of the air and you'd blow it against the mountain. And you'd see how much rain fell out of it. And then you'd see how warm it was when it rolled down the other side of the mountain. And it taught us all about temperature changes and how much moisture is really important to that whole process. And then once you get to the top, that's why it can get so darn warm in the Dakotas and Nebraska in February when that dry air races down the mountain and it, warms up and compresses. You can have 70-degree afternoons there that are really pretty. So mountains definitely make the world go round out there for sure. No question about that. Moving on here today, you can get severe weather in the mountains, by the way. It's not
get some gnarly hail,
but you can get some pretty good stuff, especially just to the east of the Rockies out by Denver, eastern Colorado area. Let's talk SPC outlooks, Jan. The Storm Prediction Center issues these outlooks. What are they and what do they mean?
Yeah. So for those who maybe aren't familiar with that term, I'm sure you've seen them. Severe weather outlooks, weather apps have them. You see them on air forecasts all the time. You see them on social media all the time. They are traditionally colored in that kind of green, yellow, orange, red, pink scale of colors. And essentially, it's a scale of 1 to 5. How bad is this round of severe weather going to be? And I think we show these a lot as meteorologists, and we briefly describe them. But with this platform, this gives us an opportunity to really get into it and really help people understand what is it that you're actually looking at. So when you see those greens, there's a really light color of green that some stations just don't even show. And then there is a kind of darker green. And those basically mean there could be some general storms. Either the lighter green, which is just basic garden variety thunderstorms, or the darker green that is, you might have some severe weather, but not really that bad. So again, those are going to be on the lower end, especially for us here in the Midwest, where we're getting a lot of storms. Other parts, again, of the country maybe will view those a little bit differently just because you're not as used to getting the big wild storms. But here in the Midwest, we tend to pay a lot more attention once you start to get into the next level 2, level 3 category, those slight or enhanced. And those are going to mean scattered or numerous storms. And that's where we're starting to look at either more long-lived storms or storms that are capable of producing a little bit more intensity. The higher end of that, the moderate, the high, that red or pink, those are going to be much more widespread, much more, long-lived, and much more intense. So that's the basics of it. There is not any one of these that is, if you have a moderate risk, which we can talk about that too. Moderate is level 4 of 5, even though it's called moderate, right? And so there is a little bit of confusion, I think, with the names as well. And that's why so many entities will end up just using the colors or just using the 0 to 5 scale or something like that versus the actual names, because I think that our human nature kind of gets in the way of interpreting what those terms actually mean. But if you have that red, that level 4 out of 5, or moderate, that doesn't necessarily mean, we're definitely getting tornadoes. We're definitely getting a long track. It can mean that you just have a really good setup for very large hail, or very damaging winds, that are straight line and not necessarily tornadic. There is no single category that guarantees you any one type of weather. And I think that is something that also is a very common misnomer with these, that, tornadoes are the big bad beast, right? But hail and wind can do just as much damage. And the science is there for us to be able to understand and predict those larger events ahead of time as well with those. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the reality too is it depends on how you want to really look at this. Just from a language standpoint, severe weather outlook in your mind, you can replace it with severe weather risk.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's a low risk or a high risk, and then you can just kind of compare that to a doctor's visit you've had. Let's say you come back and you've got a variable that's a little bit higher risk. And the doctor says, hey, there's a couple things in here that's elevating your risk for a heart issue. Doesn't mean you're going to have it. Just means your risk is elevated.
Yep.
Until you mitigate that somehow. Now, in weather, you don't really do that. You just have to be aware on that day that your risk for the next 6 hours is unusually high compared to a normal day. And actually, to a normal day that, there's a high pressure system around, your chances for severe weather are 1/100 of 1%. And then once you actually think about those probabilities that you see come out of 30%, 45% within 25 miles of you, it's actually a pretty healthy risk when that happens. And so that's another way to think about it. If it helps plan your day, is if you replace the word outlook with risk, it might change your mindset on that a little bit. So
I
just
think that
something to think
doctor
about.
analogy is pretty helpful too, because I think that's something that people very commonly understand. Whereas if you get a severe weather risk issued, that it's like, well, it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Well, you don't always
Right.
get the heart attack. Good,
Right. And you
right?
don't want a heart attack, by the way,
Like
either.
you don't want a tornado to
No.
be going through, but it is our job to tell you that the parameters are
Yeah.
there, that it could happen, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I would love, actually, somehow, some way to get somebody with his background on here to just discuss the mentality of when a person's home is hit by a storm and that person goes online to rant at the meteorologist that says that storm wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So I think to myself, like, how mentally disconnected can you be to all of a sudden say, nope, sign me up. I would like to fight insurance. I would like to repair my home. Do you really want to do that? Like, seriously, what is wrong with you? No, you don't want to do any of that. That stuff is not fun. I've been through all that.
Correct.
You've been through that.
Yeah.
It ain't fun.
Yeah. No.
So I've never understood that mentality. Now, I think there is a mentality that is very valid. It was sunny all day. There was a moderate risk. What happened? I changed my plans because of it. Valid conversation. Very valid. And that happens. It happens every year.
It does.
You know?
Absolutely it does.
So it's one of those deals. It's the risk is there, and whenever that risk is present, be glad if you don't get hit direct, because it's just not something you want to have happen to you, your house, your family, nothing like that.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap up the show today. Less stormy, more talking about that sunshine or lack thereof. We're going to talk about daylight saving and the pros and cons. This has been in the news a lot lately. This has been something that has been talked about in DC. The House passed a bill. It's still with the Senate, I think, to discuss. Kai, can you let's unpack a little bit of, okay, school's starting up here. What does permanent daylight saving time mean for sunrise, sunsets? How that changes our lives is something we've had for quite some time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, we'd notice more of a difference the farther north you go, number one, in the country. You'd also notice more of a difference if you're on the western edge of a time zone. So that's two big things right there. But the biggest thing that I saw floating around was, the sunrises are going to be really late in the wintertime, like 9 a.m. late for some areas of the Midwest. And Iowa would be like 8:40, 8:45. And a lot of that was gone around to safety with kids walking to school, safety, getting to and from work. It's still quite dark. I get that. I tried to get a little bit of an angle on this one, though, of a weather angle to just share with everyone. If we weren't in a situation where we fell back, first off, I don't think the summer is going to be that big of a deal one way or the other. The sunrise would be pretty doggone early. I can tell you that, but that's not always a bad thing.
No.
But I mean, that's why we have shades.
Yep.
That would be interesting to see. That'd be an early sunrise. I can tell you that. But it's the exact opposite there in the winter if we don't fall back. And that's one of the reasons why we fall back. So the approach I took to this was our typical fog event and our typical road frost and refreeze events typically relax around 9:30 or 10 a.m. under the current structure. If we were not to have changed times anymore and kept it in daylight all the time, then you may have dense fog through 11 a.m. Are we still starting school? Are we still going 8 to 4 on school here? I mean, I know some middle schools that are going, their classes are starting at 7:45. What does that do? Like a 2-hour delay is what we've always used. Is it a 3-hour delay? Do we feed the kids now? Like, does a 2-hour delay become a snow day in essence? Same story with wind chills. Because if you want to change, I mean, I could fast forward my clock 5 hours right now. It don't change the weather, but it'll change the time that I hit my daytime high.
Yep.
So the morning low now might be hit at almost 9 a.m. And we've been in school for an hour. And on a really cold morning, what does that mean? So I think those are the bigger things to look at and I don't think those were even thought of.
Absolutely not.
That's just my thought. I think a lot of folks were looking at sunrise and sunset and thinking about how they're going to plan their days. One final thought on that. The sun's in your face now. If you are an 8 to 5 worker, and you've ever gone home perfectly along that western highway or that eastern street, and that sun is perfectly in your face, you're going to increase your risk of accidents. So in the wintertime, we would probably see more of that. Currently, we see it in September a lot. So another thing to think about when you're going back to school is the sun angle. So just be ready for that. If you take directly east and west routes, September is usually the worst for that, for Iowa. But those are just a couple of angles I took on it, Jan. I don't think those were really well thought of, but it'd be something we'd have to deal with if it became permanent. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if it does become a permanent thing, I think there should be some studies and some very interesting data that comes out of those of the kind of fluctuation in numbers of accidents and things like that. No matter what, like I said, like we're not losing or gaining time ever with daylight saving. All we're doing is shifting the clock. So you have the same amount of daylight. It's just when you get that daylight compared to when you're functioning in life, right? And how that is going to change, even if it is just by an hour, it is still pretty substantial.
Well, and then the last part about this before we close is, I get the whole fall back and spring forward. And, from a meteorological standpoint, a lifestyle standpoint, it works for us. I'm screwed up for a day or two from the time change. And if anybody listening is a parent, so are your kids. Is this not different than flying out of Cedar Rapids to Denver for a business trip and coming back a day later? You're changing times in a course of a day.
Yeah.
Is it not different on your body? That's my whole thing. I never hear that brought up. It's like, okay, so you're going to tell me that changing an hour twice a year raises my risk of X, Y, and Z. But if I'm an international traveler, my body's fine. Like, how does that work? That there has to be. Yeah. So I find that interesting that that's never brought up, because I can fly out to Denver and back and I'm screwed up for a week.
We keep talking about getting Dr. Tim back on this show and asking him some more medical questions. We'll put that one on the list too for Dr. Tim.
Dr. Tim. Well, it could be the altitude too, Jan. It's 5,000 feet higher than home. Maybe that messes me up too.
All right, before Kai starts bringing up other who knows what actually is impacting us, but that I think takes us a little. You've spent a whole another half hour with us. Thanks, guys. Another episode in. Be sure to send us your questions if you have them. If you had anything that we didn't get to today, that we didn't touch on enough, that sparked a new question for you, be sure to email those in to weatheredquestions@gmail.com. We want to know what's on your radar. Until next week, stay safe.